Hello guys, this is Jack, and today we're going to be talking about Together, which is the new Dave Franco and Alison Brie horror film. So let's kind of go into a small deep dive into how I enjoy this film and also at the same time what it's trying to say. So yeah, let's get into it. So Together is a supernatural body horror film directed by Michael Shanks in his own directorial debut. And it's basically about a couple who move to the countryside to find themselves in this kind of small town. And even before, they settle, they go on a hiking trip and they fall into a cave where they're stuck in the cave for, the first quarter of the film. But once they escape the cave, something bad happens between both of them in terms of their romantic relationship and their body. And Alison Brie and Dave Franco are a real couple and play a couple in this film. And you can really tell from the beginning that they're really loving and they really care about each other while also trying to, figure out the emotions of what their relationship is right now in their lives. And once you understand, that concept and also the concept of codependency in this film, then the film kind of enriches the body horror aspects. And I think Shanks, his direction is very level-headed. It's very smart. It doesn't go into, stupid territories as far as, horror goes sometimes. And usually the word elevated horror is a type of term that you can use for smart horror. But here, I think the elevated horror aspects works in its favor because it's actually just talking about codependency and anxiety in both, characters. Dave Franco, I think this is one of his best performances in the past, few years, and probably his best performance to date as this musician who is very anxiety-ridden and is trying to get out of his own comfortable zone. I'm stuttering, but his own zone, and he's trying to, escape from the house and go to his gigs again because he hasn't done music in the past couple years. And then you have Alison Brie, who is a teacher who's going through a lot of stuff at the school, and she befriends one of the teachers who is actually played by Damian Herman, and this kind of causes a weird rift between the three main characters. But even more so than not, I think this film is very engaging. There's a lot of stuff that you can chew on, especially the body horror aspects where it plays a lot with the togetherness of both characters. I won't say what the parasitic thing is in this film and what it does and what it tries to do, because it's one of those films that it doesn't fully explain, the mechanics of the world that these people are in. And I think that's for the better, because I rather question more about, the stuff that's happening than, the film kind of spoon feeding you a lot of the information. It's kind of Bring Her Back this year with that film, where it was giving you a little bit nuggets of information with how the mechanics of the world works and how, that stuff works with some of the weird stuff that was happening in that film. But here, again, it's not fully explaining the stuff that's happening, and I really like that. Aside from that, I do think it is predictable in a sense where you kind of start to pick up the pieces as far as, what happens in the third act and some of the characters that pop up and, turn. But overall, I think this film is very engaging. Dave Franco and Alison Brie, they work like fine wine. This film kind of reminded me a bit of the film Barbarian by Zach Cregger, where the concept is, something that we've seen before, but it also plays a lot with tone. There's a few comedic parts in the film that kind of breaks the tension, but also at the same time doesn't break the entire, scene. And that's mostly between, Dave Franco and Alison Brie. And again, I do think this film is slightly predictable in its third act, but I'm willing to slide it around or let it slide because I like horror films that, at least give you the nuggets and give you something that makes you think instead of, playing it safe or dumb. Again, really enjoyed this film. 4 out of 5. I gotta give a shout out to Dave Franco because he did direct The Rental from a couple years ago, which was a horror film that I also really enjoyed that played a lot with emotions and character dynamics, and this does the same thing here. So I can kind of tell that Dave Franco is a really good sport as far as making horror films and being in horror films, and I actually hope he does more dramatic performances because he's doing a lot of good stuff here. Same with Alison Brie. But yeah, 4 out of 5. As far as, awards contention, if I really have to like throw it out there, maybe Dave Franco for Best Actor if it's a really good day. And I honestly think he could get the Independent Spirit Award nomination this year, as this film is kind of like a small budget film. But yeah, overall, pretty good film. Check it out. Very original, very spooky. It's gonna like pull your body apart, and don't have sex because there's a scene where they're having sex. And yeah, peace out.